The judge in the Marshella Chidester trial is not allowing the case to be live streamed, but videos of court proceedings can be released once the jury is dismissed for the day. I'm assuming this means many people who normally follow live cases might not even know this one is happening. So I thought I would make a video to get people up to speed. I want to be clear. This is not a fun case to hear about, and you may choose to not watch the trial itself to avoid the footage. Right off the bat, we have a wild motion. The defense wants their expert witness to testify over Zoom. He cannot physically attend because he is in Florida. This trial's in Michigan, and going on a flight could cause a blood clot in his brain. But the judge points out that this man, their expert, has not flown in 20 years. So why did they hire him knowing that? And how is it an emergency motion? Prosecution is against it. The judge denies it and says he has time to get in a car and make it there. The judge calls for the jury, and the defense has another thing to talk about. The judge has to stop the jury from coming in. He already seems very upset with this defense and tells them to hurry up. Basically, the defense says they filed for an appearance at 9 in the morning when they took on the case, but that same day there was a search warrant executed that he wasn't told about, so it's an ex parte communication. And the judge responds, "We are months past that." And the defense says, that doesn't mean the 14th Amendment doesn't apply, and the judge says, anything you want to address needs to be put in writing, and then it will be addressed. So, I guess we have that coming, most likely. At this point, the jury gets to come in, and the judge explains the charges, and what is required to find the defendant guilty. And I want to be very clear, I'm trying to make this shorter, so I'm not reading verbatim what happened in court. Count 1, murder in the second degree. Shortened version, and I'm sorry if I get any of the names wrong, she killed Alana Phillips. She knew major injury or death was the likely result of her actions, was driving recklessly or under the influence. She intended to kill, intended to cause greater bodily harm to the victim, or she knowingly made a scenario where death or greater bodily harm was likely. Count 2, murder in the second degree, same as above with Zane Phillips. Count 3 is operating a motor vehicle while intoxicated, causing death. I think this is self-explanatory enough for anyone watching the video here. And this is for Alana Phillips. Count 4 is the same thing, operating a motor vehicle while intoxicated, causing death, Zane Phillips. And at this point, the court shortened count 5 through 9, because they're all the same. Operating a motor vehicle while intoxicated, causing serious impairment of bodily functions with the victim, and each one has a separate victim. The jury instructions also explain the process to them, and the prosecution begins their opening statements. And again, it's very cut down. April 20th, 2024. A mother held a birthday party for her 3-year-old son, with face painting, a hot dog bar, entertainers, props, and backgrounds for photos, and even a bounce house. This was at the Swan Boat Club, where the mother had worked for several years. The party started at noon, and by 3, the guests had finished singing to the birthday boy, and the kids were enjoying the attractions. Less than 2 football fields away, the defendant was driving, heading to the boat club. That's all captured on camera. The party is on security cameras, and the defendant on a camera mounted to garages across the street. Mariah Dobbs and her 3 children, Jaden, Zane, and Alana Phillips, had just sat down to the table to enjoy their lunch from the hot dog bar. I want to make sure I said Mariah Dodds. I think I said Dobbs. It's Dodds. At the same time, the defendant backed out of her driveway and accelerated her car in an arc out of the driveway, crashing into a small tree. So, the defendant backs out of her... this is what blows me away at this point. The defendant backed out of her driveway and accelerated her car in an arc out of that driveway, crashing into a small tree, and then into the neighbor's full-size pickup truck, forcing it through a wooden fence. And then after all that, the defendant placed the car in drive, speeds off to the boat club, and just 4 houses down, Mariah Dodds is getting cake pops from the dessert station for her kids. The defendant barrels full speed down the road, makes a right turn into the club parking lot, and they show the jury the crash. I will say, listening to it being said by the prosecution, there are steps. And I think that is what they were going for, if I didn't convey that well, that this wasn't like one action that caused the accident. There were multiple things that happened. There was a backwards motion that caused an accident, followed by a forwards motion. That's kind of important, so I wanted to make sure I get that across. The prosecution says they will prove the charges. Witnesses for the prosecution will be presented in 4 groups. First is the guests and boat club members. They'll talk about the party, what they saw of the defendant. Some will show video of the crash and the aftermath. Some will say what they remember, don't remember, went through. You will not hear from all the people. There were about 90 people in and out of the party. The second group is the first responders, fire departments and law enforcement, body cameras, which means you will hear from the defendant herself. The third group is necessary, due to the rules of evidence, to hear about what was in her blood when she crashed her car. Finally, you will hear from surviving victims about what they remember, their injuries, and their road to recovery. And then they go through the charges, just like the judge did, explaining that it isn't just a .08 to find intoxication. You can be intoxicated below a .08. Some people are intoxicated before that point. Or was she under the influence of gabapentin? I'll talk more about that later, which is a medication she was on that could also possibly be under the influence. And they expect the jury will find her guilty after looking at the evidence. And then we have the defense opening statement. This defense, I hope I can capture it well, is the only way I can put it. I don't know why I found it unnerving. He begins by saying it was very, very sad what took place. 2 children died and people were injured. The case is about, was there an intent to kill somebody? Was there an intent to be reckless? And he said you'll hear more from him in closing arguments. He said they come up here and talk because they have seen police reports. So it's like coming attractions on a movie or whatever. Not because we read minds. He stresses this case is important for everybody to move on. He says he has a lot on his shoulders and the defendant needed someone to come forward. Journalists just show a snapshot. The jury will see everything. What an honor to serve on a jury. He said he doesn't have to make an opening statement. He can waive it completely, but he chooses to stand up because the prosecutor made a good argument. The proofs, that is a common trend. You're going to hear proofs over and over. Proofs. He says, the proofs will show she was in the military at 18 years old, that she served 4 years in the army, the real army. I'm not talking about something up north. Is this like a... I was honestly taken aback, because this is in Michigan, right? So he's like insulting Canada? Which is like a really bold move, because Michigan, chance of them knowing someone from Canada, I would assume is a little higher, but also like in this political climate, like, did he mean something else? If he did, let me know. But I was very just taken aback there. I'm like, I paused. I paused. I'm like, that sounds like a bad thing you don't say. And he goes, you will know she has never been pulled over for a ticket. He believes the proofs will show her credibility, that she's an excellent driver. The proofs will show she suffers from seizures and neuropathy. Her seizures are rare. The proofs will show that when she's had them, her feet will go down real hard, and her hands too. And then less than a minute later, it relaxes and she's spaced out for up to an hour. When you see the videos of what happened, it was out of character. Please keep an open mind. The proofs will show the feet go down. The cameras catch the vehicle taking off. She doesn't drive that way. It will show it went 25 feet into the building. It will show she was honest and that she had a glass of wine. The investigators got proof of her getting that drink and the glass of wine. A witness will say she didn't even finish that glass of wine. The proofs will say she had less than one drink. The proofs will show she has neuropathy. She was a former Commodore. The proofs will show she is speaking more clearly. This is a good one. The proofs will show she is speaking more clearly than a defense attorney. And I know you're hearing that. You're like, I must have had some weird notes. There was a whole tangent about how she speaks better than him after the accident. The proofs will show she is interviewed right after going 25 feet into the building. The proofs will show she is asked 1 to 10, how intoxicated are you? They asked if she's able to drive, and the proofs will show she just crashed into a building. Keep your life experiences in here. Don't make up your mind until the end. The proofs will show it was an immediate conclusion by police. A search warrant for blood was tested. A lot will be covered. The defense is confident. The proofs will show she said the alphabet when asked. So, as I said, I don't know. I thought the defense was weird. I don't really want to use the word creepy, but it felt creepy. But maybe that's just the vibe the guy gives off, and I don't really want to judge it on that. But also, if that's the vibe you're giving off to a jury in what is a murder case involving children, it's probably not good. Probably not a good vibe. I don't think the way he tried to frame it, like the neuropathy thing, is going to go well. I don't see a jury really like using that as an excuse, because at least for me, if someone's like, oh, I had an accident because I have massive neuropathy and I have seizures and I'm taking medication, and my first thought is, then don't drive. That doesn't excuse you. She knew her conditions, but we'll continue. I really didn't like the defense's opening. But I guess they got to work with what they got. First witness for the prosecution is the woman who hosted the birthday party for her son. She goes over how she worked at the club and planning the party for her son. An overhead view, a picture is shown so the jury can get like a visual tool to understand the layout. She knows the children who died and their mother. She knows all the other victims too. It was after the singing, so she told everyone to eat and enjoy. She was on the phone with someone who couldn't make it, and it sounded like a bomb. It looked like a bomb. She grabbed her son and cousin at the doorway, lots of dust and lights flashing. She went back in trying to help victims. One of the girls was thrown on top of the bar, so she helped her down and set her next to someone she knew. Then she saw the defendant coming out of the side of the car. She tried to explain how people were located at the scene. There was screaming and yelling. She accidentally stepped on someone. People were trying to help each other. The defendant is identified by the witness. The witness grabbed the defendant and started yelling at her as she realized at this moment it was a car, because she was so out of it. She just now realized it was a car. Someone yelled, there's a kid under the car, so she told the defendant to pop the trunk so they could get a jack. She got the jack, and the defendant came back over, so she grabbed her and started yelling at her again. The defendant asked Tweety, where is Dawn? Tweety is the witness's nickname. Dawn is the defendant's husband. So they knew each other. The witness said she could smell alcohol in the defendant. She said she kind of just realized she drove the car into the building and told her to stay the F away from me and threw the defendant to the ground. She repeats she tried to get the jack. Some guys at the party grabbed some 2x4s and used them to lift the car. She could see Zane under the wheel of the car. He was reaching out, so she pulled him out and put him on her lap. His head was bleeding. His arm was limp. He had blood all over his face and shirt. She asked him if he knew who he was, and he said, yeah, Z. The witness said she asked if she knew who I was. He said, yeah, God, Mom. Then someone yelled, someone yelled, Tweety, there's another. So the witness handed Zane to her sister and tried to go back for Alana, but couldn't reach her. The car started slipping, so they told her to go back out. She went to try to get Alana from the other side, but she was wedged into the doorframe and was gone. She was blue and discolored. More victims were laying nearby. She tried to keep the mother from seeing Alana. They kept telling her to look straight. She ran out to get EMS workers and started directing them, but she wasn't allowed back in. She's a possible witness for rebuttals, but no more questions from the defense. So the defense had no questions for that witness, and I would say for good reason. Next is a man who lives next door to the Swan Boat Club. He knows the defendant and has known her family pretty much all his life. A huge sound like an explosion drew his attention. He thought it might be kids tearing up the parking lot, and he wanted to get it on video. When he saw a hole in the boat club, he turned his video camera on and went inside. It looked like a war zone. Law enforcement has a copy of that video. They also have a copy of his surveillance footage. A copy of that footage was shown to the police, and they play that footage in court where you can see the video speeding down the road. I mentioned something special about the way video is being shown in this trial. It's a little weird. I'll get to that in a bit. I didn't realize how strange it was until later when it got brought up. Next is the video of the witness entering the boat club. The witness identifies the defendant. So you get to see him basically, you get to see the footage of her speeding down the road, and then you get to see him walk into the destruction. Next up is a Swan Boat Club employee. The speed limit, the county says 25, Fish and Wildlife says 15. Rough roads, gotta be under 20 to drive safe. He explains the club's security system with the cameras. Another overview of the club is submitted to explain where the cameras are. He arrived 20 minutes after the accident, maybe less. He got the detectives into the camera system and helped them make copies. They moved to submit the clips, and this is where there's a disagreement on videos. It happened in the last video, but it kind of got brushed off, and it really came to light here. The defense doesn't want to say they agree to the submission of the video into evidence until it is already shown in court. But the prosecution says if they show it first, if you show it, then the cat is out of the bag when you make it not admissible later because the jury already saw it. The judge seems to me at least to agree with the prosecution, but says to play it first. The first clip shows the car hitting the building and the reaction outside, people limping injured. This is like an outside view from like above. You see the guy from the previous witness arrive and start taking his video. Next is footage on the inside surveillance camera showing the crash itself and people clearly being hit by the vehicle. You see the injured, the response they're trying to get help. And this is why I gave a little bit of a warning of just jumping into this case. The next video on the other side of the wall doorway, God, I don't even want to describe this. The vehicle enters, and as it crashes at an angle, it crashes into a doorway. I hope that makes sense. And the next video is from the other side of that wall / doorway. You see someone who at first I thought had a pinned leg. Later on, I realized it appears to be horribly broken in multiple places to the point that I didn't even identify it as their leg. They can't move. People arrive trying to clear debris elsewhere. And while clearing it, there's a woman. And they start to pull her out, and she's heavily bleeding from the mouth. They try to explain to the jury, as I did, where the location of this video is. It's a little weird. It's like the car hits a door. The cross-examination from the defense, I'm going to be honest. What they asked and the way they asked it, I don't know what their plot is. If there is a plot here, if they're leaving it open. But they asked, if the security system isn't in good shape, is it the witness's fault? And he said correct. I don't know what that means. I don't know what the purpose of that could be, but they asked. My issue with it, I think, is if you're on the jury and you just watched what I watched, I would be taken aback by that being the rebuttal. That being the question. Well, what if the security system isn't in good shape? Well, it doesn't matter now, does it? Because what they just saw. Maybe I'm getting a little emotional here, but I would think the jury would have some emotions after what they saw. Next witness is a woman who was there for her great-nephew's 3rd birthday party. It was a circus party, cotton candy, bouncy house, popcorn, a stilt walker, big bubbles, decorations, and more. She heard a loud boom and lost consciousness. She said she heard a voice say, "Let's get her up in the chair." She wanted to stay on the floor due to pain. She had 4 fractured ribs, 2 fractured scapulas, a concussion, PTSD, anxiety, and is now having problems with her neck. They want to try injections, but if those don't help, they'll do a 3-level fusion in her neck. She said she didn't know the defendant before that day. She said the defendant said a few times what happened. Let me make sure I do this right. What happened? I passed out. That's the way the witness is saying it. It was in a whiny, high-pitched voice. Hopefully that came across. One of the nephews said, "Shut the F up, you lying bitch. You're drunk." The cross starts. She hasn't met the client before that day and didn't know her neurological conditions she was treated for. To be clear, the neurological conditions of the defendant. And that the witness is upset about her injuries. Next witness was there for her great-nephew's 3rd birthday party. The birthday party was like a 3-ring circus. It was magical, describing the events, many children there. She heard an explosion. She thought she heard a bomb. She got hit in the head by something, and there's still a dent. She passed out. In this case, her son got her up into a chair, and it was chaos. She didn't know the defendant before that day. The defendant was set in a chair by the witness after they got her up. The witness said she thought she was blind when she came to. She saw a car had come through the wall. If it had been 2 feet to the right when it entered, the witness said she would be dead. The witness said she heard the defendant repeating, "I passed out! I passed out!" Again, they use the whining voice. She said the defendant looked at the sister-in-law and says, "Are you hurt?" in a normal voice, and then went back to screaming, "I passed out!" This witness never spoke to the defendant. This witness had a concussion, a traumatic brain injury, and memory loss. The defense again asks if she ever met the defendant before. The answer is no. Defense again asks this witness on a cross about any medical conditions she knew the defendant had. The answer is no. The defense asks how she knows Tony. She said Tony is her son. And Tony had their grandson at the party. Tony knows the defense lawyer, but the witness doesn't know how. And then there's a break and they return. So, okay, everyone knows everybody. It's kind of the theme of this one. This next witness was there for his grandson's party. Before the crash was lots of fun, lots of people. He heard a big explosion. He did not lose consciousness and he was not injured. He saw the vehicle in the building after the dust cleared. He ran over to help people. He opened the driver's side door. He saw the defendant awake, fumbling for something between the seats. He said the defendant was drunk. He got the defendant out of the car. He can't remember who was the other guy next to him helping. He heard a baby crying and looked under the vehicle. He called for a jack, and him and others lifted the car so the child could be taken out. Defense cross. Defense asks, is he sure he helped the defendant out and it wasn't another man? He said he helped her out of the car. There were 2 of them. But he doesn't know the defendant's neuropathy history. Defense asked if someone enters a building by crashing a car, if they might not have the same faculties as someone just walking in, and the witness said it's possible. State's back. State asks why he said the defendant was drunk. He said when he reached in to shut off the car, he could smell alcohol on her. Car was still in drive when he turned it off. Defense is back up. Asked if anyone was drinking at the party. He said a few, wasn't paying attention. It was a total mess inside. Defense is kind of putting the idea maybe some drinks flew onto the car type thing. Next up is a sergeant. He was dispatched to the Swan Boat Club for a car crash. People were injured and trapped. He arrived to see people on the ground needing medical help in a large hole in the building. Some firefighters got there before him. Inside the club, more people needed medical care, and he saw the vehicle. He asked where the driver was. They pointed to the driver in the car. He took the defendant to the patrol car. She said she didn't need any medical assistance and gave her name. He was wearing a body camera. They begin showing the body camera footage in court, and as soon as he exits the vehicle, you hear screams. Injured people, and he enters. He takes the woman identified as the driver out. She was seen sitting in a chair. The defendant says she passed out, says she was feeling ill, says she has seizures, says she was coming to the club but not for the party. She takes medication for seizures. She'd been drinking a little today. She had something to drink about half an hour ago. It was wine. At this point, I looked up the medication that they keep saying she was on. You can take it while drinking, but it can make you tired or sleepy. And I found recommendations that if you're newly taking it, you shouldn't drive until you know how it affects you. I didn't see anything about whether you should drive after drinking while taking the medication, but I'm going to assume that's not advised, especially if it makes you tired or sleepy. Next up is the detective. She was a road deputy during this case. She got the same call as the previous witness and arrived. It was chaos, multiple people injured, people trying to find loved ones. She lists the people she helped on the scene by name. They go through the injuries they appeared to have. She was wearing a body camera, and the footage is shown to the court. It starts right by the car with injured people visible. This has cuts. They actually cut the video. It's not a solid piece. It's clips of her walking around, talking to people while first responders work on who they can. She's taking notes. It shows a woman taking out an electric stretcher, her taking notes from the injured, at least what she can, because they're in so much pain. She's obtaining personal information, and that's why the audio cuts out at certain points. And that was day one. So that was day one of this case. And I wanted to cover it. So hopefully this explains what's happening day one. I'm going to try, let me look at the time actually. I'm going to try to get maybe day two as well, so I can be caught up and then do day three tomorrow. Have both day one, day two come out on the 5th, I think. Again, I dropped something. I have my microphones in front of my clock. Yeah, so the 5th, I'll try to have both day 1 and 2 out if I can. Maybe day 3. I don't know how long that's going to be and when that'll come out. So that's up in the air because everything's delayed with this case, remember? I have a game launch on the 6th. So that game launch is something that I played as a child. I don't know how to pronounce it correctly. Suikoden. I played it as a child. I never beat it. So it's like $50 and it comes with the first and the second. And I mean, a single copy of the first game is like $180 just for the disc. So I'm thinking about picking it up and making content for my second channel. So there might be less for a bit. But while I'm saying that is also this case, I'm going to try to keep doing the videos for it as I can. So even though there'll be less other stuff, and I know some people don't like the other stuff, there'll probably be less other stuff. This is something I still plan to try to put out as fast as possible. I'll take a few hours, and watch the footage and keep notes and record as much as I can. So Just that's my plan right now. Things can change. But just I wanted to put it out there. I wasn't actually sure. I even wrote all these notes and I wasn't sure if I was going to put it out. And then the more I think about it, I'm like, I just have this like worry that like if I could warn someone about what they're getting into with the footage, then I want to, because it's disturbing. And the defense is going to have to fight against that. I pity them, because that's a lot to go against. I don't know how well this defense is going to work. He talks about bringing in real world experiences, like into the defense did, and my thought is like, everyone knows someone who or not, you might not know them personally, but everyone's seen someone who shouldn't be driving for various reasons, medical, age. I don't think people will be that sympathetic, especially if she's on medication that can have an interaction with drinking, and she drank and then drove. I just don't see people. I don't see the jury having sympathy. But we'll see how it goes.